Hello and welcome back to Drinking by My Shelf. My name is Emma and as you can see I've just moved house, so I'm somewhere totally different today. So I'm just cracking open a gin and tonic to celebrate moving into our new flat yesterday. Sadly I've had to put most of my books in storage, as you probably saw from my last video, so I don't have very many with me. But I've got a couple to show you because today I'm going to tell you about 8 of the best brand new releases this June and July that I recommend you read on your holidays this summer. And I've got a pretty fun summer TBR for you because this is all, or almost all, made up of thrillers. I think that thrillers are kind of the best summer reads. A lot of articles I read about the best books to take on holiday are all like romances or fun beach stories, and I actually think that thrillers are the best things to read on holiday because they're fast, page turners, you can get totally lost in them without worrying about what else you're supposed to be doing, and it's really fun lying on a hot beach somewhere getting chills down your spine because of the book you're reading. I think that's great. So 7 of the 8 books I'm going to tell you about today are thrillers, and the last one is not a thriller, but it is about sharks, so I think it qualifies as a weird, slightly scary summer read. So let's start with that one. This is The Shark Club by Anne Kidd Taylor, and this book is about a woman called Maeve who, when she was 12, had her first kiss while standing in the ocean and then was immediately bitten by a shark. I mean, what a day she had. Ever since then, she's been obsessed with sharks, and the rest of the book follows her now as an adult. She's now a marine biologist. And this book is a really fun mix of genres. It's part love triangle. She has a romance with a colleague as well as reigniting a broken engagement from many years before. But it is also part scary, which is why I'm including it in these scary summer reads video. She discovers a shark finning operation, which she has to try and shut down, and that bit gets a little bit scary and tense, I thought. Next, I've got Fierce Kingdom by Jen Phillips, and this one is about a mother who's at the zoo with her 4-year-old son. But as they go to leave, they discover that there is a shooter at their entrance. And the whole book takes place over the course of 3 hours while they're trapped in the zoo trying to avoid the active shooter in the zoo. So really, really scary, really topical, something that most of us have worried about at some point and tried to imagine what it would be like. I definitely have. And this was really, really tense. My heart was banging while I was reading it because I couldn't help just imagining what it would be like. It is worth mentioning though, it's very much about her maternal instinct. It's very much about her looking after her son, which was really, really interesting and scary, but I've definitely, from reading the Goodreads reviews written by people who had children, they definitely seemed to enjoy it more because they sort of understood that instinct a bit more. Whereas for me, obviously I can understand it, but I guess slightly less relatable for someone who doesn't have children and therefore I guess is a bit more selfish, naturally. So that's just the only thing worth mentioning, is that it is definitely about maternal instinct. Next, I've got The Marsh King's Daughter by Karen Dion, and this was really not what I was expecting. It was very interesting. This one is about a woman who was born in captivity, kind of like in Room. Her father had kidnapped her mother and kept her prisoner in this cabin. The main character from this book was born as a product of that kidnapping, and then was raised in captivity and did love her father. They did have a relationship, and he taught her about hunting, and there's a lot of pretty gory stuff with animals that I didn't particularly enjoy, kind of squeamish veggie over here. But anyway, that's all background. The present day story in this book is that the main character discovers that her father, who had been caught and sent to prison after they escaped from the cabin, has just escaped from prison. And the main character, when she was a child, used to play tracking games with her father where she would have to track him down, he would be hiding, and she realises that she's the only person who will be able to find him. Yeah, like I said, it's just very, very different from what I was expecting. It's very different from anything I've read before, but I was hooked, and it really, really stood out, because I've read nothing but thrillers this month, and this one really stood out. Okay, so those 3 came out in June, and the rest of these are all coming out in July. So the next one on my list is Don't Close Your Eyes by Holly Seddon. This one is about twin sisters who haven't spoken to each other in many years, and one of them is afraid to leave her house. She basically lives entirely in her flat, and we don't really know why, but we'll find out. And the other one has just been kicked out of her home and is really, really missing her child. And there's a really, really good twist that I didn't see coming. It really kind of turned everything on its head for me, and that was fantastic. I love any book with a twist. I'm such a sucker for that, so I think that's what made it a kind of initial 5-star for me. There's not much else I can tell you about it because it's actually quite generic sounding. I remember even when I read the blurb, I was like, this just sounds like a very generic thriller, but I'm going to give it a go anyway. And it was really worth it, but I can't explain why, because that's all kind of part of the twist. If you're willing to take my word for it that it will surprise you, give it a go. But I can't say that it's, unlike some of the other ones I've been talking about, like The Marsh King's Daughter, which are really, really different from normal thrillers, it doesn't stand out in that sense. It is very much your average psychological domestic thriller that you're looking for, but it's just a really good one. Next, I've got Bring Her Home by David Bell, and this is about a man whose daughter has been missing, and the novel opens as the hospital calls to say that they found her. She went missing with her best friend, and the two girls have both been found very, very badly beaten. The friend has died, and the main character's daughter is alive but beaten beyond recognition. So the first section of the novel is the main character, Bill, waiting by her bedside. But as it goes on and she gets her voice back, he starts to learn more and more about her life that he didn't know, and about his wife who had died a year and a half before, more of the secrets of her life as well. It's pretty long, which is good for if you just want to take one book on holiday, this will see you through. It's got loads of twists and turns, so it will definitely keep you guessing, you'll constantly be surprised. And it's got a main character who is flawed, which I really like, because it makes reading just more complicated and more engaging, I think. Okay, next on my list is Final Girls by Riley Sager. This one's been getting a ton of buzz. It's basically based on that horror movie trope of the final girl, the last girl left standing in a slasher movie where everyone else has been killed. And it's really fun. If you love kind of 90s movies like Scream, you're going to love this one. There are 3 final girls in the novel who have each been the sole survivor of a gory mass murder. But the novel itself is not too gory at all, which is good for me because I cannot deal with gore at all. So we follow the novel through the perspective of Quincy, who is the 3rd most recent final girl. But Quincy, even over the last 10 years, has never been able to recover her memories of what actually happened at Pine Cottage, where all of her friends were murdered. But at the beginning of the novel, one of the other final girls, she's never met either of them before, shows up at her house. And through the course of the novel, Quincy will slowly remember what really happened at Pine Cottage. And yeah, like I said, this one is just so much fun. Just like movies like Scream, where you're a little bit scared, but it's really fun, it's really enjoyable. Next, I've got Last Seen Alive by Claire Douglas. This one is probably the scariest that I read. It really, really spooked me. I had to get out of the bath because I was too scared reading it by myself. Basically, it's about this couple, a married couple, who do a house swap with another married couple that they've never met. So this couple set off and they stay in this amazing mansion where this couple live. But straight away, something's off. Somebody is watching them. There are strange things going on in the house. It's so, so spooky. As well as following the main scary present-day narrative, there are also flashbacks because we know that the main character survived a fire many years before in Thailand and that she did something bad, but we don't know what. And when we find out, I absolutely love the way it's told. There's a really good twist in the way it's told, where you think you're reading one thing and suddenly you find out that's not what's happening. And I love when that happens, when it kind of is like the rug's pulled out from under your feet and you realise that you're not where you thought you were. And then finally, the last thriller coming out in July that I'm going to talk about today is The Marriage Pact by Michelle Richmond. And this one, I would say, wasn't as good as the others, but I'm still going to include it on this list because I think if you're looking for something to bring in your suitcase and read on the beach, you're still going to have a lot of fun with this one, even if it's slightly weaker than the others. So the premise is that a newlywed couple are opening their wedding presents, and one of them is this very mysterious box inviting them to join the Pact. And the Pact is a community of people who have taken a vow to make their marriage work. And there's certain rules that they have to follow, and they all go to parties and support each other, and they basically vowed not to get divorced. And the newly married couple think that this sounds really fun and nice, and they're invited by somebody quite cool, so they go for it. But as you can probably guess, because this is on the thriller list, things do not work out the way they thought, and it all becomes pretty horrific. And I think I'll just explain the reason that I didn't love it, is the things that happen in the book become really, really scary, but it'd be much scarier if I believed how they got themselves into that situation, if I felt like it could happen to me. Whereas I felt like right from the beginning, I would have had my doubts about the situation from the start. As you probably thought when I explained the pact to you, it sounds a bit weird, so it's not clear why they sign up for it. And I think it'd be better if it was more kind of slow how they got into it, so you can see yourself falling for it. Okay, that would have been a big jump because the camera cut out because the battery's running out. So I'm just going to wrap this up here. This hasn't been a super successful first attempt at filming in my new setup without my tripod or anything, but I will try to have it up and running much more smoothly by next week. Also, I just noticed my head is kind of half cut off. Has it been like that the whole time? But anyway, those are my 8 summer thrillers for you to read on the beach on your holidays, and I hope you really enjoy all of them. Do leave me a comment below if you've read any of them or if any of them catch your fancy. And of course, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for new videos every Friday. See you next time!